Well, some of them, the granite in the Great Pyramid comes from more than 500 miles to the south. It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage.
The ancient Egyptians left behind some of the most incredible monuments in human history. Towering obelisks, massive statues, and temples carved from granite that has lasted thousands of years. But here's the mind-blowing part. They did it without modern tools. How did they cut, shape, and polish one of the hardest stones on Earth with nothing but copper tools, sand, and sheer skill? Graham Hancock claimed to have found out what the ancient Egyptians used to cut the granites, and the proof he brought challenges everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Join us as we uncover the long-hidden secrets of Egyptian granite, cutting discoveries that will amaze you and change the way you see ancient history forever. The mystery of ancient Egyptian granite. Cutting granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth, a rock so tough that even modern tools struggle to shape it without careful planning and effort. Yet, thousands of years ago, the ancient Egyptians managed to carve enormous blocks of granite with incredible precision. They used these stones to build some of the most stunning monuments in human history. Gigantic statues, towering obelisks, and sacred temple walls that have survived millennia. When you see these creations today, it's almost impossible not to marvel at the skill it took to make them. And this leaves us with a huge question. How did they do it without modern machinery? Historians and archaeologists have long studied these wonders, trying to piece together the tools and techniques the Egyptians might have used. Granite is not like limestone or sandstone, which are softer and easier to shape. This rock is dense, resistant, and unforgiving, which makes cutting it a massive challenge even by today's standards. Yet, the Egyptians somehow managed to move enormous blocks, shape them perfectly, and join them together with astonishing accuracy. It's not just about strength, it's about precision. How could people, using bronze or copper tools, manage to carve surfaces smooth enough to fit together like puzzle pieces without leaving gaps? Most researchers suggest that the Egyptians used a combination of basic tools and clever methods. They probably hammered stones made from even harder rocks against the granite to chip it slowly, a technique that required patience and precision. They also likely used sand as an abrasive, rubbing it between the tool and the granite to gradually wear the stone down. Imagine sitting there, striking and rubbing day after day, week after week, shaping a stone that could weigh several tons. The thought alone is exhausting, yet they did it. What makes this even more fascinating is the scale of some of the projects. Take the obelisks in Aswan, for instance. These monolithic towers were carved from single pieces of granite, sometimes weighing hundreds of tons. Moving them from the quarries to their final destinations in temples required not only incredible planning, but also an understanding of leverage, friction, and manpower that seems almost impossible for a civilization so ancient. Even the smallest mistakes could ruin an entire block of stone, wasting years of labor. Yet, time and again, the Egyptians succeeded. Looking closely at these monuments, it's clear the Egyptians were not just lucky. They were highly skilled engineers and craftsmen. The edges of the granite blocks are astonishingly straight. Some surfaces are so smooth that they reflect sunlight like mirrors. The joints between stones are perfect, without the gaps we might expect if someone had just hammered them roughly into shape. Every line, every curve, every angle demonstrates a level of mastery that continues to baffle scientists today. It's as if they had knowledge or techniques that were far beyond what we usually credit to ancient civilizations. And this is where the real mystery begins. Conventional explanations, using only the tools we know the Egyptians had, struggle to fully account for the results. Copper chisels, for example, are far softer than granite. Using them should leave uneven surfaces, yet the stones look flawless. Even harder stone tools or abrasives like quartz sand require enormous effort to create straight lines or perfect curves on such a dense rock. Some researchers suggest that the Egyptians might have had methods that are now completely lost to history, or techniques so subtle and precise that no modern experiments can fully replicate them. The more we explore, the more it becomes clear that cutting granite was not just a matter of brute force. It was a combination of skill, patience, planning, and probably some secrets that the workers carefully guarded. Every block of granite was a puzzle, every monument a challenge, and every finished piece a triumph of human ingenuity. It's not just engineering, it's art. Imagine standing in a quarry, under the blazing sun, chipping away at stone heavier than a small house, knowing that one wrong strike could ruin months of work. Yet, these people did it over and over, creating structures that would last thousands of years. This is the story that continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and curious minds around the world. It is the story of a civilization that combined intelligence, innovation, and determination in ways that still inspire awe today. When we look at the granite monuments of Egypt, we are not just seeing stone. We are witnessing the incredible potential of human creativity and the mysteries of knowledge that may have been lost over time. Understanding the methods behind granite cutting is not just about technology. It's about appreciating the brilliance of people who lived thousands of years ago and yet achieved feats that remain nearly unimaginable to us today. Every detail of these stones tells a story. The straightness of a wall, the smoothness of a surface, the careful alignment of a temple block. They remind us that the Egyptians were not only builders but also thinkers, problem solvers, and artists. And as we continue to explore, experiment, and uncover evidence, we get closer to answering the question that has puzzled generations. How exactly did the ancient Egyptians cut granite with such mastery? It's a question that promises adventure, discovery, and maybe even a few surprises that challenge everything we think we know about the ancient world. Tools and techniques of the ancient Egyptians. When we think about ancient Egypt, we often imagine grand pyramids, towering statues, and gleaming temples. But behind every magnificent structure was a story of tools, techniques, and hands that shaped stone into perfection. Cutting granite, one of the hardest stones in the world, was no small task, and the Egyptians had to invent clever ways to make it possible. What makes this even more incredible is that they achieved it with tools far simpler than what we use today. The primary tools they likely relied on were made of copper and bronze. These metals are soft compared to granite, so at first glance it seems impossible that they could have carved such tough stone. But the Egyptians had a trick. They didn't just rely on metal striking metal. Instead, they combined their tools with patience, precision, and natural materials to wear the stone down slowly but effectively. Imagine sitting for hours, repeatedly striking granite with a tool softer than the rock itself, carefully chipping away without breaking the surface. It was not speed, but technique that mattered. One of the most fascinating methods historians believe the Egyptians used involved pounding stones made of even harder rock, like dolerite, against the granite. Dolerite is a volcanic stone that is much stronger than copper. And by repeatedly hammering it against granite, craftsmen could slowly remove pieces of the rock. It was a time-consuming process, sometimes taking weeks to shape just a single block. But it allowed them to cut, shape, and refine granite in ways that seemed almost magical. Another essential tool in their arsenal was sand. Yes, ordinary sand played a huge role. By rubbing sand between the granite and the tools, they turned the abrasive particles into a cutting agent. It acted like nature's sandpaper, gradually grinding away the stone as they worked. This technique, combining pounding and abrasion, required a delicate balance. Too little force, and the granite wouldn't move. Too much, and it could crack or splinter, ruining months of labor. It was a careful dance, a mix of strength, patience, and skill. The Egyptians also understood the importance of water in their work. Wetting the sand and granite helped reduce friction and made the abrasive process more effective. Water could carry away small particles of stone, preventing buildup that might interfere with precision. It's simple, yet genius. They were using physics, natural materials, and careful observation in a way that modern engineers might admire. Beyond cutting, the Egyptians developed techniques to move these massive stones once they were shaped. Levers, sledges, and ramps allowed them to transport granite blocks weighing tons from quarries to temple sites, sometimes hundreds of miles away. Workers would lubricate the ground with water or use sledges on sand to reduce friction. This combination of simple machines and teamwork enabled them to accomplish feats that still leave archaeologists scratching their heads. Some experiments in recent years have tried to replicate these ancient techniques. Archaeologists have taken copper chisels, dolerite hammers, and sand, and attempted to cut granite the way the Egyptians might have. The results are slow but effective. It takes patience, teamwork, and careful observation. Exactly what the Egyptians would have mastered over generations. Watching these demonstrations, it becomes clear that their success was not just luck. It was skill passed down, refined, and perfected. A mixture of ingenuity, experience, and discipline. Even the smallest details mattered. Marks on the stones suggest that the Egyptians measured, marked, and constantly checked their work to ensure perfect alignment and smooth surfaces. They weren't just striking blindly. Every motion was intentional. Every hammer, every scrape, every sweep of sand had a purpose. The labor may have been grueling, but it produced results that remain impressive today. This brings us to the real wonder of their methods, simplicity paired with intelligence. They didn't need machines or electricity. They didn't need diamond-tipped tools or hydraulic presses. Instead, they used what nature and simple technology offered, turning them into instruments capable of extraordinary results. It's a lesson in human creativity, how understanding materials, forces, and technique can allow people to achieve the impossible. When we look at the tools and techniques the Egyptians used, we realize that each method reflects patience, planning, and deep knowledge of the material. They were engineers, artists, and scientists all in one. Every dolerite hammer, every copper chisel, and every grain of sand contributed to monuments that have stood for thousands of years. It's not just a story of cutting stone, it's a story of human ingenuity, determination, and brilliance. Even today, scholars debate the exact techniques and methods, suggesting that there may still be secrets lost to time. But what remains undeniable is the evidence of their skill. The Egyptians' ability to manipulate one of the hardest materials on Earth, with basic tools, natural abrasives, and teamwork, is a testament to the power of human knowledge, creativity, and perseverance. It's a mystery that continues to inspire, challenge, and intrigue everyone who studies it. Understanding these tools and techniques doesn't just tell us how granite was shaped. It tells us about the people who shaped it, the minds behind the labor, and the culture that valued precision, beauty, and durability. The ancient Egyptians weren't just building monuments, they were crafting stories in stone, leaving clues for generations to marvel at, wonder about, and perhaps one day fully understand. So keep watching for the most interesting and intriguing part. Graham Hancock's discovery and investigation. Graham Hancock has spent decades exploring mysteries of the ancient world, and one of his most fascinating investigations is into how the ancient Egyptians managed to cut granite so perfectly. For centuries, scholars and archaeologists have offered explanations, But Hancock approached the question differently. He didn't just rely on books or conventional theories. He wanted to see for himself, to test ideas, and to uncover evidence that could bring real clarity to one of history's most enduring puzzles. His journey began with observation. Hancock looked at the surviving monuments, studying the walls, statues, and obelisks with an almost detective-like curiosity. He noticed patterns, details, and techniques that were easy to miss at first glance. Every straight edge, every smooth surface, every perfectly aligned block hinted at knowledge and skill that went beyond simple chisels and sand. To Hancock, the conventional explanations, using copper chisels, dolerite hammers, and abrasives, only partially accounted for the results. Something more, something deeper, seemed to be at work. To investigate further, Hancock conducted experiments inspired by the ancient methods described by archaeologists. He replicated the use of copper tools, dolerite stones, and sand abrasives to see how granite could be shaped. The process was slow, deliberate, and physically exhausting, which gave him a first-hand understanding of the effort involved. He realized that cutting granite wasn't just about strength. It was about technique, timing, and control. It required thinking ahead, planning each strike, and understanding how the stone would react. But Hancock didn't stop there. He began to explore evidence that suggested the Egyptians may have had techniques that modern scholars overlooked. He examined ancient markings, tool impressions, and wear patterns on stones that had been left behind in quarries and temples. These small details told a story that hinted at methods more advanced than simple pounding and grinding. Hancock started to piece together clues that suggested a level of knowledge and ingenuity that had been largely underestimated. During his research, Hancock also traveled to quarries and archaeological sites, observing firsthand how ancient stones were cut, transported, and installed. Seeing the scale of the stones, the precision of the cuts, and the logistics involved in moving massive granite blocks, he gained a deeper appreciation for the engineering feats of the Egyptians. It wasn't just craftsmanship, it was organization, planning, and innovation on a scale that few civilizations could match. Hancock's approach combined hands-on experimentation with careful study of existing evidence. He didn't rely on speculation alone. He tested theories in practical ways. For instance, he attempted to recreate cuts and shapes using the same materials the Egyptians would have had. The experiments were painstaking, but they offered insight into how such hard stone could be shaped without modern machinery. He began to see that the Egyptians may have employed a combination of conventional tools, clever techniques, and possibly methods that have since been lost or forgotten. One of the most compelling aspects of Hancock's investigation is how he connected theory to proof. Rather than just talking about what might have happened, he brought evidence. Demonstrations, experiments, and observations that could be directly compared to the ancient monuments. He showed that, while traditional explanations could work to some degree, the perfection seen in the monuments might also suggest subtle, precise methods that were carefully refined over generations. It's the difference between saying, "It could have been done," and showing, "This is how it likely happened." Hancock's findings don't just answer questions about tools or techniques. They challenge our understanding of history. If the Egyptians had knowledge or methods that we no longer fully understand, it suggests a level of sophistication that pushes back against conventional timelines of technological development. His work invites us to reconsider what ancient civilizations were capable of, and to acknowledge the brilliance, creativity, and persistence of those who lived thousands of years ago. What makes Hancock's investigation so exciting is that it feels like a journey into the unknown. Every discovery, every experiment, every piece of evidence opens up more questions. How exactly did they achieve such precision? What methods were lost over time? Could there have been knowledge passed down that we can no longer trace? These questions make the investigation thrilling, turning the study of stone cutting into a detective story that spans millennia. By combining curiosity, observation, and experimentation, Hancock brings a fresh perspective to a mystery that has fascinated historians for centuries. He reminds us that history isn't static. It's alive, waiting for those willing to dig deeper, test assumptions, and uncover secrets hidden in plain sight. His work bridges the gap between the past and present, showing us that even thousands of years later, we can still learn from the ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians. Ultimately, Hancock's investigation is more than just about granite. It's about understanding the people who created monuments that still inspire awe today. It's about appreciating the skill, patience, and intelligence required to achieve what seems impossible. And it's about the thrill of discovery, finding proof, testing ideas, and uncovering truths that challenge our understanding of history. His work invites all of us to look closer, think harder, and never stop asking how the wonders of the ancient world were built. Now, for a better understanding of how it all came to light, you need to continue watching. Proof of ancient techniques in action. Seeing the tools, imagining the effort, and studying the monuments is one thing, but Graham Hancock knew that the real magic would come when he could demonstrate how the ancient Egyptians might have actually cut granite. Theory is one thing, but proof is something completely different. To uncover this, he didn't just rely on guesswork, he went straight to action, experimenting in ways that brought the past to life right before our eyes. Hancock's experiments were a combination of patience, skill, and careful observation. Using replicas of ancient tools, copper chisels, dolerite hammers, and natural sand as an abrasive, he began to see how granite could be shaped, polished, and smoothed. At first, it was slow going. Every strike had to be measured, every movement intentional. He quickly realized that the Egyptians' work wasn't about brute strength. It was about control, rhythm, and knowing how the stone would respond. Even a small misstep could crack the granite, wasting days of labor. Watching him work, it became clear that the monuments weren't just impressive because of their size. They were astonishing because of the precision and care that went into every detail. One of the most exciting aspects of Hancock's proof was the way he replicated ancient markings found on stones. Tool impressions left in quarries and on unfinished blocks told a story about the methods used. By experimenting with different techniques, Hancock could match the marks on the granite to the tools he was using, showing that the ancient methods could indeed produce results consistent with the surviving monuments. It was like stepping into a time machine, connecting modern experiments to actions taken thousands of years ago. Hancock also explored how abrasives worked in practice. Sand, when combined with repeated strikes from harder stones, became a powerful cutting tool. He demonstrated that even a soft metal chisel, when used with sand, could slowly but steadily carve through granite. This wasn't just theory. It was living proof that the Egyptians' methods were practical and effective, even without modern machinery. The process required patience, yes, but it was achievable, and the results matched what we see on the ancient monuments. What made Hancock's demonstration even more compelling was the scale. He didn't just experiment on small stones. He tested techniques on blocks large enough to show how the Egyptians could manage massive pieces of granite in quarries and temples. This helped illustrate not only the method of cutting, but also the ingenuity behind moving, shaping, and assembling these enormous stones. Every experiment was a window into the world of the ancient craftspeople, showing that their skill was real, replicable, and precise. Hancock's experiments also raised questions about methods that might have been lost over time. While traditional techniques explained much of the process, some evidence suggested that the Egyptians had ways of controlling precision that we still don't fully understand. Some cuts were so smooth and angles so exact that even modern tools would struggle to achieve the same result without meticulous planning. Hancock's proof doesn't claim to have all the answers, but it shows that the Egyptians' methods were both practical and extraordinary, combining simple tools with incredible skill. Watching the process unfold, it's easy to feel a sense of awe. Imagine standing in the heat of the quarry, striking granite with rhythm, scraping it with sand, and watching the stone gradually take shape. Every small piece chipped away was part of a larger plan, every mark intentional, every block part of a bigger vision. Hancock's experiments bring this reality to life, helping us understand not just what the Egyptians did, but how much care and intelligence went into each step. The proof also highlights the human element. It wasn't just about tools or techniques. It was about people who worked together, shared knowledge, and honed their craft over generations. Hancock's demonstrations show that the monuments weren't the work of a single genius, but the achievement of communities who understood their tools, their materials, and the limits of their environment. Their dedication, patience, and precision are what made these creations last for thousands of years. By combining theory with demonstration, Hancock bridges the gap between ancient history and modern understanding. He transforms abstract ideas into tangible evidence, showing that the mystery of granite cutting isn't unsolvable. It's explainable through skill, observation, and a deep understanding of materials. His experiments allow us to see the ingenuity of the Egyptians in action, to imagine the rhythm of chisels, the grit of sand, and the dedication it took to transform raw stone into monuments that still inspire wonder today. Ultimately, Hancock's work proves that what may seem impossible at first is achievable with intelligence, patience, and the right techniques. Granite, once thought too hard for ancient tools, could be shaped and polished through methods that combined creativity, science, and human perseverance. His proof doesn't just solve a puzzle, it brings the past alive, allowing us to witness the brilliance of a civilization that turned stone into stories, monuments into messages, and labor into legacy. But then, it's necessary that we understand what this revelation means for the future. Implications and what it means for history. Looking at the monuments, the tools, and the experiments, it's easy to feel awe at the skill of the ancient Egyptians, but the story doesn't end with admiration. What Graham Hancock's discoveries and demonstrations show us goes far deeper. It changes the way we think about history, knowledge, and human potential. Understanding how granite was cut isn't just about stone. It's about the people behind the work, the society they lived in, and the intelligence they carried. First, Hancock's findings remind us that the ancient Egyptians were far more sophisticated than we often give them credit for. It's easy to imagine them as people with simple tools doing back-breaking labor, but the evidence shows a level of ingenuity that rivals modern engineering. They didn't just stumble upon techniques, they refined them over generations, experimenting, learning, and passing knowledge down like craftsmen, scientists, and artists rolled into one. Each block of granite is a testament not just to physical effort, but to thought, planning, and creativity. Second, these discoveries challenge what we think we know about technology in the ancient world. Granite cutting with copper tools, dolerite hammers, and sand abrasives may seem rudimentary, but it required precision, patience, and an understanding of natural materials that's remarkable. When we see how effective these methods were, we begin to realize that technological sophistication doesn't always mean complicated machinery or electricity. It can mean understanding your environment and using simple tools in extraordinary ways. The Egyptians mastered this balance, creating results that are still puzzling modern engineers. Hancock's work also highlights the possibility that some knowledge from the past has been lost. The precision of some granite monuments suggests techniques that may no longer be fully understood or documented. It makes you wonder about all the ideas, methods, and innovations that ancient civilizations might have known but didn't survive to our time. Each discovery, each experiment, is a reminder that history is not fixed. It's a story that grows and changes as we learn more. Beyond technology, the implications touch on human creativity and potential. If people thousands of years ago could move, shape, and position stones heavier than most houses using only simple tools, then what does that say about what humans are capable of when knowledge, observation, and effort come together? Hancock's work challenges the assumption that progress is always linear, that ancient peoples were primitive and modern society is automatically smarter. On the contrary, they achieved feats that continue to inspire wonder, and understanding their methods allows us to appreciate the brilliance of their civilization on a whole new level. The monuments themselves are messages across time. They tell us about beliefs, culture, and priorities, but they also tell us about intelligence and skill. Every polished surface, every precisely cut block, every carefully aligned wall reflects a society that valued perfection, precision, and longevity. Hancock's experiments make this clear. They show that these weren't random acts of construction. They were intentional, planned, and executed with mastery. Understanding the methods behind the work gives us a deeper connection to the people who built them. Another implication is the way we approach historical mysteries today. Hancock's hands-on method, experimenting, observing, testing, demonstrates that studying history isn't just about reading books or analyzing texts. It's about engaging, trying things, and questioning assumptions. The investigation into granite cutting shows that history can be alive, interactive, and even experimental. By recreating the techniques, Hancock allows us to see, touch, and feel the process, turning abstract ideas into tangible understanding. Finally, these findings inspire curiosity and wonder. The ancient Egyptians weren't just builders, they were thinkers who solved problems that many of us would consider impossible. Their achievements remind us that human creativity is timeless, that intelligence is not limited by era, and that there are always lessons to learn from the past. Hancock's work doesn't just answer questions, it sparks new ones, encouraging us to look deeper, think critically, and never stop exploring. In the end, the story of granite cutting is more than a story about stone. It's a story about people, ingenuity, and the ways humans push boundaries. It's about discovering methods that bridge millennia, connecting us to minds and hands that lived thousands of years ago. Hancock's research shows that history is not static. It's alive, full of surprises, and waiting for those curious enough to seek answers. By studying how the Egyptians cut granite, we gain more than knowledge of tools or techniques. We gain insight into human potential, the power of observation, and the extraordinary capabilities of a civilization that continues to inspire awe. Each monument, each block, each smooth surface is a reminder that human creativity knows no bounds, and that even the hardest stone can be shaped with intelligence, patience, and vision. Hancock's discoveries ultimately challenge us to rethink history, appreciate ancient mastery, and see the past not as distant and inaccessible, but as a living lesson in ingenuity, skill, and determination. The implications go far beyond Egypt. They speak to every era and every person willing to push the limits of what is possible. Granite cutting is not just a technical achievement. It is a timeless testament to the brilliance of the human mind. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.